Good evening, everyone. Welcome to Intellectual Conversations at Phoenix Literature Festival. I'm Rohan Bansal. I'll be the moderator for today's session. And today's session is a very exciting session and something that I have been looking forward to all week. It's a session on the role of alternative education, on channeling creativity in today's education system. And I have three incredible panelists with me today. The first panelist I have is Mr. Ramesh Menon. He has been a journalist for close to 43 years, working with India Today, Times of India, Business India Television, and others. He's a recipient of the Ramnath Goenka Award for Excellence in Journalism and the Madhavan Kutti Gold Medal for Journalism. He's presently the adjunct professor at Symbiosis Institute of Media and Communication in Pune and the course director of creative writing at Aurobindo Center for Arts and Communication. He has produced numerous documentaries on environmental and social issues, and he has authored 6 books. His latest book is Modi Demystified: The Making of Prime Minister, published by HarperCollins. Welcome, Mr. Ramesh Menon, to our intellectual conversations, and really excited to have you here.
Thank you.
My second panelist today is Dr. Pooja Sehrawat. She is an educationalist, career counselor, parenting coach, and soft skills trainer, and has been serving the education sector in India for over a decade now. She has received a PhD in education from Jamia Millia Islamia, and her area of research has been continuous and comprehensive evaluation. She is currently head of the school at one of the most prestigious linguistic minority school in NCT Delhi, and she strongly believes in developing positive school-home environment to foster an optimistic culture where students and teachers both can reach to their greatest potential. She thrives on a 360-degree development of parents, teachers, and students for excellence. Dr. Pooja, welcome to Phoenix Literature Festival. We are super excited to have you here.
Thank you so much, Rohan. Thank you.
Thank you. Our third panelist for today is Abhijit through which he creates a new variety of schools that do not have any teachers, exams, or curriculum, where children and adults of all ages decide what, when, and how they learn. These learning spaces called Nooks started in a small village in Karnataka and are now spreading across the world, already existing in international countries such as Bangladesh, Zimbabwe, Uganda, and Rwanda, and need a complete reimagining. So, Abhijit, welcome to Phoenix Literature Festival. Looking forward to hearing your views on this topic.
Thank you. Pleasure to be here.
Uh, Firstly, we'll start with you, Mr. Ramesh. Firstly, is what does alternative education mean to you, and how do you think the landscape is evolving in India today? What are your thoughts on that?
See, this is something which, whose time has come. We need to do this, and we don't see much of it happening, but that's a tragedy. The idea behind alternate education is to ensure that our children um, grow up in an atmosphere where they don't feel caged with all kinds of systems. I typically call it the tick marking syndrome of Indian education, where everyone has got a schedule and they keep on tick marking everything, saying, oh, we did this, you know, like they could have a 2 hour theater workshop, they do that and then they tick mark it without looking at the fact whether that theater workshop of 2 hours was enough. Do you need to do a 4 day workshop to actually bring out the talent in the student, to make them lose their inhibitions? We are not looking at that because we are so busy with this stick marking syndrome. But alternate education is all about opening the minds of the children, allowing them to think creatively, giving them space to develop, um, giving them a new perspective, a different kind of worldview, rather than a boxed situation, where everyone is thinking like this, like a horse which is running with a carriage, they have got blinkers so that they don't look either side. Our children are like this all the time. They are running, and this is all that they can see. They can't see the big picture because we don't encourage them to do that. I mean, our traditional schools, look at what they are doing. You know, they do not build the personality of a student in terms of, we don't teach them how to be confident, we don't teach them how to be happy, we don't teach them how to be grateful, we don't teach them to look beyond their textbooks. And alternate education is all about innovation, it's about imagination, it is about thinking out of the box, it is the ability to choose what they want to do. If you go to a typical engineering college and you ask a classroom of 60 students, how many of you want to do engineering? You'll be shocked to know that maybe two or three hands will come up. I've actually done this. I've been to engineering colleges to do workshops with them, and I've asked them. And, you know, imagine 56, 57 students out of 60 do not want to do it, but they are forced to do it because that is the system. But alternate education is about doing what you want to do, following your dream. You know, I mean, I'm talking too much. There are other panelists here, so I'll stop here.
No, absolutely. Thanks so much for sharing your perspective, Ramesh. You raise a very important point is that alternate education helps students get out of that fixed mindset or that fixed box that traditional education puts them through. So, Abhijit, I want to hear your views as a follow-up to Mr. Ramesh. Is that what is it about alternative education that fosters creativity, or what does alternative education mean to you in this particular regard? Can you throw some light on that?
Yeah, thank you. I think many times people misunderstand when they think alternate education is like some specific kind of, pedagogy or a specific kind of curricula or a specific experience. I don't think it is so. If I were to best describe it, it's kind of like surgery to me. If if your usual education experience was like a tumor, then the experience of alternate education would somewhat feel like getting rid of it. Yeah. And that's all that I can imagine it to be. And there would be many ways, many different ways in which you could learn, and you would have some choice in it, you would have some say in it, and you would have you would have not only the possibility of making these choices, but also the capacity of doing that, right? The problem or the comparison between alternative and let's say mainstream schooling is not really of whether one has exams and the other doesn't, or whether one has A and the other does not have. The difference is what these systems think of the people who are learning in it, right? Mainstream schooling somehow tends to believe this thing that children are incomplete humans. One day they will become human being and they will benefit society. They think of children as little economic assets to one day manipulate, right? Until then, they must suffer. They must stay in misery and go through 20 years of schooling, so that then we promise them the world. We say, all right, after these 20 years, you can make all the choices you want, all the freedom you will have, and you can become the person you want to. But of course, it's no longer possible. You've prevented me from making any choices for 20 years. Now I don't know how to make these choices. Now I don't know what to say is my interest or my passion. So alternate education is an escape route, is a way to get away maybe from this, to preserve some of that human integrity, to preserve some of that curiosity, to preserve some of this thinking that we are born with. We don't necessarily have to be even taught, which is systematically killed over a long period of time. To answer the question, how does alternate education foster creativity or uh, create it? It doesn't really. It just does not try to obstruct it. That's the way I would think of it. That it does not actively try to obstruct natural thinking and creativity. Yeah. Thank you.
Thanks, Abhijit. I think we'll go into depth into what you said in later parts of the discussion today. Before we do, Dr. Pooja, can you share your view of how is alternative education being fostered in today's society, where we have a mix of traditional schools and also these alternative platforms where students can, um, engage with? So, what are your views on how that landscape is evolving in India?
Okay. So you will find many of the alternate schools evolving. And the thing is that they are not very much visible, as Ramesh sir said, because many of them, they are actually not backed up by the business tycoons. They are not too much into advertisement and all. Right. But why do we need to have such alternative schools when we already had the mainstream and formal school system, right? Why we have to look for alternative schooling, because somewhere we realized, maybe as educational reformers, maybe as parents, we realized that these mainstream schools or formal schools, they are not serving the purpose that we as a parent need, that the society need, that the 21st century demands, they are not fulfilling, these demands. Now we need to look back into the history of formal schooling. If we talk about alternative education and the feature or the salient characteristics of alternative education, it's not something new. It has been there in time immemorial. If you go back to the Vedic education or Gurukul system, right? They were just like alternative education. They were child centric. There was a lot of flexibility, when it comes to teaching methodology, curriculum, everything is there. But slowly, gradually, with the advent of, colonization, industrialization, right? We started, like as Abhijit rightly mentioned, that we start looking the children as monetary assets which can be prepared for future markets. So we need to, we at that time we were looking for preparing our new generation that can meet the demand of industrialization. So they came up with this idea of having formal schooling, which follows these standardized curriculum. They have set time, schooling time. They wear a uniform and they have a standardized form of assessment, which actually puts every individual, every child into one basket. But that might not work with every child, because every child is unique. They have their own individual characteristics, traits, and personality. So now we are seeing the drawbacks. What are the drawbacks that we are seeing of the formal education? That somewhere it has neglected the holistic development. The child is not developing spiritually, emotionally, mentally, socially. And we have actually created intellectual monsters which are actually lacking in the human values. And there are people who have taken that as a red flag, and they have started working for a change. And I think it's a very good sign for our society that we have people who have started working in this direction, and they came up with the idea of alternative education. It's just that we need more awareness, more education, and these people who are working in this direction should come in the public and tell them that there is another alternative, there is another way of educating your child, which is going to prepare them for life, not for the market.
Thank you so much, Dr. Pooja, for sharing your views. I think you raise an important point as to traditional schools are more commercialized, they're more in tune with how society has evolved as an industry so far. So I just want to dive a bit deeper into what separates traditional schools from these alternative forms of education. So in my research, there were a few universities that I came across, such as Swaraj Ecoversity, that focus on self-learning, that focus on connecting with the community, with your ecology around you. And that is a far stretch from what we see in formal schools today, where you are put together in a class, as Dr. Pooja pointed out, and expected to learn a bunch of things over 20 years, as Abhijit pointed out, and just go out into the market. So I just wanted to understand a bit from all of you is, what role do you think self-learning and connecting with your ecology plays in channeling that creativity in humans, in children, and how that brings about different forms of expression and confidence in children. So we'll start with you, Ramesh sir. What are your thoughts on these particular insights?
See, basically, the point is this, that we are turning robots. We are bringing in robots, as Pooja spoke about. We are who are we creating in this traditional method of education? We are all victims of education, right? But the fact of the matter is, if you go back to old times, like the Vedic times, and look at how they how this teacher and student relationship worked, and how they taught them, and how they learned. I mean, India had such rich centers of learning. Nalanda was one of them, right? We lost all that. When the British came in, Macaulay brought in an education system which was designed for clerks. He did not want leaders. He didn't want thinkers. He didn't want creative people. He wanted clerks to run the British administration. And that is why, if you pick up any of our students, they'll be very good clerks, because that's what it was designed for. Now we need to change that, and alternate education is trying to move in that area, where it is uh, you know uh, encouraging innovative thought. Give space to the child. I remember Sir Ken Robinson, who was a very good educationist. He had a very interesting example of a girl. That girl, the class teacher of that girl wrote to the parent saying, "Please come and meet me, because there is a serious problem that I need to discuss with you." So the mother was very worried. Very next day, she landed up in school. So she took her out of the classroom and told her that, "Look, your child has got a learning disorder. She's a very slow learner and she needs psychiatric treatment." So the mother took the child to the psychiatrist, and the psychiatrist just spoke to her, you know and then he said, "Look, I need to take your mom out of the room and talk to her. Please be seated in the room, uh, and you can do what you like." And before he went out of the room, he put on the music system and he walked out of the room, and then he closed the door. And they were standing outside the door, and there was an eyepiece, and he was looking through that eyepiece what is happening in the room. The girl got off her chair and she started dancing. So the psychiatrist told the mother, "Please look at what your daughter is doing." So she looked at her and she said, "She's dancing." She said, "Yes, there is no problem with your child. She is a creative child. She is a born dancer. Send her to a dancing school." I forget the name of that girl, but she became one of the most celebrated dancers in the country, and one of the richest, because she was paid so highly for every dance performance. What I'm trying to say here is, all our children are creative in nature. Every child is creative. When I do creative writing workshops, I ask them, how many of you think that you are creative? Only 4 or 5 hands go up. The rest of the class is silent. And I ask them, "Why don't you think you are creative?" They said, "No, there is nothing creative about us." So I give them an exercise and I tell them, "Please make a call to your dad and mom today and ask them, what were you like when you were 3 years old? What were the things that you used to do? What were the things that you used to talk about? And come and tell me tomorrow what your parents told you." And they came with such fascinating stories. So I told them, "Look, if you were creative at the age of 3, what the hell happened to you today?" And I have the answer. The answer is, education destroyed you. So we have to get back to the joys of childhood. We have to reach out to our inner being. For example, Aurobindo's philosophy of education was that, you know we need to bring spiritual education in, which is not talking about God and religion, which is about reaching your inner self, discovering yourself. Your thoughts. What is your personal philosophy of life? If you go to a school or you go to a college and you ask students that, please tell me in the next 2 minutes, what is your personal philosophy in life? They will not be able to tell you because they never thought of it. No one encouraged them to do that. But the moment you tell them that, look, you need to have a personal philosophy of life, they can come out with it. We need to create opportunities for them. So I think it is just the lack of political will to do that. The Delhi government has done a fantastic job with schools, and it is really admirable. It is the only state government in India since independence which has spent such a large part of its budget on education. You need political will to do this. You can't do it otherwise. And you also need a band of very highly committed teachers who are very passionate about teaching, who love teaching, whose best moments are in a classroom, you know, because that is what they want to do. We need people like that. And, when Abhijit was talking, when Pooja was talking, I could see the passion coming through. We need people like that, who feel that, this is something that they can do to change our world, and it will happen. But right now, we can see very little evidence of that.
Thank you, Ramesh sir, for pointing that out. You bring up an interesting point about connecting with our inner child and channeling our creativity through what we did in childhood.
Mm.
So I want to dive deep into that. Abhijit, in Project Defy, in the learning spaces that you created, can you talk about the process of channeling this particular creativity as to how students are encouraged to bring about their creative side, or what processes or initiatives do you follow at your learning spaces?
So we start by not calling them students first.
Mm.
A lot of
Mhm.
that trauma is associated with the word, isn't it? It's the same for teachers too. The moment you stop calling teachers teachers, their behavior totally changes. And it's such a strange thing that these words can have so much power over us. Um, I mean, at the Nook, we don't do anything special here. People feel very strange that a 9 or 10 year old child, when he or she comes to a Nook, and we say, yeah, you can learn whatever you want. First of all, the child does not believe it. Like, what the hell are you talking about? I'm a child. I don't know. How can I make these big decisions myself? And we have to calm them down first and say, hey, don't worry, why is it such a big decision? And they say, no, but my future, what will happen? Already, you wouldn't believe it, like at 9 and 10 already people are kids are thinking, am I going to be successful? My parents would have problems with me, and so on. Like, they pile and pile and pile on. I say, all right, you know what, stop worrying about what will happen 20 years down, or even 10 years down. Just worry about today, right? Just today, just what you want to do today, and we'll worry about tomorrow, right? And that's the core, I think, premise in which these spaces that we create, they work. There's it's a lot more unlearning than learning. People have to get rid of this thought process ki, nahi, somebody will come and they will teach me, only then I will learn. Somebody will come and tell me what to learn, only then I will decide what to learn. These things are have to be forgotten, and it takes some time, it takes a lot of pain, sometimes tears too. It's frustrating to not be told when you have a habit of being told forever, right? It's quite frustrating to handle learning like that. But eventually everybody can recover. If you're older, you might take a little longer because you've been programmed for a lot longer than maybe a younger kid. But the recovery is possible. The space, the environment is what should allow it and should encourage it. So it's no rocket science. I mean, it's kind of like how Ramesh just mentioned when he talks about the example of that girl in the room, and then just leaving her be. It doesn't take rocket science. It probably just means let go. Stop trying to control and determine the child's fate. I what frustrates me is educational conferences, right? They blow my mind, honestly. Every time I've been to one, they always talk about child-centered learning, and there's not a single damn child in the room, right? There's not one. And they're talking about child-centered learning because of the ego that we think, we adults, we must center all our attention on the child.
Yeah.
That was not what the word was supposed to mean, right? The word was supposed to mean that the child would be at the center, meaning the child would be at the point of power, not adults. The child would decide, not adults. But here we even misappropriated that. We even misunderstood that and said, no, we will we are going to tell children this is very good for you. And to me that's such a ridiculous thing. And I mean, you spoke about connecting with the ecology, and trust me, you right. There will be some school that will take this idea, turn it into a nice little pamphlet, or make it a large board, and say, hey, you know what? We do this as well. Your child will come here, and for a total of 15 minutes in the week, we'll connect with ecology, right? Yet another gimmick. So the point is, do we really care, or are we just bound by our skills in marketing to use one gimmick after another? Many of those which were actually very true intentions of alternate educators taken into mainstream and then turned into a nice little toy to attract and lure parents to spend a little bit more money than they otherwise would. So no, the point is about letting kids be, allowing them to question, and taking a secondary role, taking a more, taking a lower role, not the one who decides, but the one who is there to support when the kid falls. Not prevent the kid from falling. That's literally the worst you could do to a child, is to prevent him or her from falling down. The point is, are you there to give your hand when the kid wants to stand up again? So that's, I think, the point of differentiation here. It's not really, do I have enough number of trees inside my school? It won't matter the least, right? If you see, all you do with those trees is see it from your beautiful window and your 9-hour classroom time. So it really matters what the intention is, who is it for, who decides. And if the child or the learner, I would say, for me, the learner need not just be a child, but if the learner is not part of that decision making, no matter you make the best looking school with the best infrastructure and the greatest sounding program and the most money spent, it will one day still be another tumor. So that's where I would like to end that question.
Thank you, Abhijit, for pointing that out. So, following up is, I'd like Dr. Pooja's insights is, how do you design a curriculum where you let children be? Like, how do you maintain the balance between enabling children into being the best version of themselves versus, supporting them in the back end into, creating that learning environment for children? What are your takes on that, on how to foster that creativity in children?
Okay, so when we talk about formal education systems, so they don't have that much of a flexibility when it comes to, curriculum. But when it comes to alternative schooling, so everything is in your hand. So you decide. So I will not use the word teacher, as Abhijit said. So, here the learner decide and the trainer, so that association decide what is best for the child. And you will be surprised to know, when I became a parent, I actually, I was a teacher earlier also, but when I had my own child, things changed completely. And I became, very much concerned about his future and education, first of all. Because working, in private sector, in government sector, in the higher education system, I know all the loophole, and I know where my child is going to land. Right. And Ramesh, sir, it doesn't matter how much budget you are putting, how much budget, money doesn't matter. It's all about the intention. It's all about the passion you are putting, the efforts you are putting into. Many schools, they are charging really very high. Maybe the government, is spending a lot in education, but the ground realities are totally different. And the ground reality, only the people who are inside the system, they know. And that was very scary for me because I have been through all these system. So I wanted something for my child which is going to save him from all the drawbacks that our existing system is posing. So what I started doing, I started looking for schools. Right, when he was 4 months, I started looking for schools, preschools, where my child can have the kind of environment that will bring him as a holistic individual, all round personality development. And I visited around 20 schools of Delhi, which is the capital city of Delhi, and I was not satisfied. I was not at all satisfied. So what I did, I started looking into the curriculum of different countries, and I prepared my own curriculum. I prepared my own curriculum, and depending on my child, I started, giving him that learning environment. I never taught him by book. I taught him by the real life experiences, like counting in the bathroom also. All the body parts, heavy, wet, dry. All these concepts were told or taught to him in a very natural setting in the bathroom itself. Right. In the beginning, he was able to recognize one, two, three, four. But I don't, recognition was already there, but he was not able to comprehend or understand one plus one or two things, makes, two. The recognition was there. So that concept I inculcated in him by playing with pebbles. So these are the playway methods, or the real life situation. The learning takes place in that. The students totally learner. It depends on the learner, and it totally depends on the person who is dealing with that child. And when it comes to parenting, also it is said that when a child is born, a parent is born. No, it takes time. There are parenting skills that need to be developed. You need to train yourself for that. Even as a teacher, you need to develop or train yourself. You need many skills, and you need to be a keen learner and a lifelong learner. You should be always motivated, always enthusiastic. You should be creative, because it is going to set an example. When a child sees a mother or a teacher herself motivated, herself enthusiastic, doing different things, automatically it is observed, and it is very natural. And yes, you very rightly said, Abhijit, it's not a rocket science. You just need to be natural, do things naturally in the natural environment, where the student will not even get to know that they are learning something, that somebody is trying to teach them something. There the learning get maximized, and you don't have to put them in a different set of school for that. As a parent, every individual, take the responsibility of your child. You can have the same system at home also. Okay, so it will be aligned with the system. You will be following the same curriculum, but the teaching methodology exposure will be totally different depending on the pace and the demand of the child. I have been doing this, and I have not read this anywhere in the theory. It just came with practice, with experience. And the more you experience, more you get expertise in that. You develop a very strong connection with the learner in this. And I think this is the ultimate solution, where every individual need to take responsibility of our future generation. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Pooja. Which this you raise an important point that parents have to bring that, find ways of bringing creativity in how they raise their children. So one thing that Ramesh pointed out is the learnings of Aurobindo Institute, on what they're based on is they're focused on discovering a spiritual connection in children. So Dr. Pooja, I want to ask your views is are on this particular aspect is, how can does spirituality play an important role in how parents raise their children, or how these alternative programs are designed? Do you see that playing an important role in in children's education and parenting as well? What are your thoughts on how to discover
Yes.
spiritual connection and how it can be inculcated in these alternative programs?
Yes, definitely. I agree with that. That spirituality has a very crucial role when it comes to foster creativity, not only in children but in parents as well. So, from spirituality is what, as Ramesh sir also mentioned, it is self-realization. When you realize your inner potential, your inner capability, what you are capable of. So, when you realize that you are capable of doing something, you pay more attention to that. You are more focused. And when that intense attention is there, you come up something very beautiful, very unique, because you have connected that so well that other distractions, other thoughts, other memories, other emotion doesn't interfere in that, right? And that brings creativity. So you, as a parent, first need to work on your spiritual aspect, because child is going to observe is very automatically, very organically. You don't have to work too much on that. If it comes into you, your child will automatically observe. If I'll give you one example, my example I'll give you. I was not spiritually, very well developed emotionally, because my schooling system was not, never worked on that aspect. So though I was very intelligent, though I was very creative, but somewhere somehow I was struggling with my emotions. I used to find it very difficult to tackle my emotions, right? Anger management wasn't there, emotion management wasn't there. When I was low, I was very low for many days, complete isolation. When I was angry, I used to get very destructive. So what is the point of having, so much of degrees when I'm not able to control my anger, my emotions? And if it is there in me, my child is continuously observing my behavior. Don't you think he is going to pick that up? So I worked on that aspect. I did a lot of meditation, yoga. So what it did, it actually aligned my thought process. I was completely in meditation for 3 days. And then there was a self realization. And what was the self realization? That you are enough. You are enough. And maximum problem in your life happens because you speak. Stop speaking. Everything is within you. Peace is within you. Work on yourself. And the pandemic proved, whatever materialistic things that you have gathered so far, one day has come that it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter, right? So, and that time actually taught you how to live with the changing time, how you adopt, how you have evolved, right? So in this changing time, the one who is most intelligent, is most strong, will not survive. Who will survive? Who can adopt with the change. So you need to, as a parent, as a teacher, you need to inculcate that in yourself, and automatically it is going to observe by the children, and it is definitely going to bring the creativity. Now mind is clutter free. I can focus on many things, many ideas come in my mind, and I work and execute on that. So spirituality, it worked for me wonders. So I agree with this. Spirituality does help in foster creativity.
Thank you so much, Dr. Pooja. Ramesh sir, can you shed some light on how you've seen spirituality being developed in these alternative forms of education, and what practices or what initiatives can be, inculcated on a daily basis in children to, to help to, from the get go, like from the point that they enter alternative education, how can spirituality be a part of the system?
Basically, it is about teaching them to be more confident, teaching them to have a sense of self-esteem, teaching them to be happy with themselves, teaching them the importance of gratitude, teaching them to be empathetic, by experiential learning, not by lectures, because experiential learning is the best form. Because when they do experiential learning, that stays with them forever. So they their value systems also change. The way they look at life change. You know, when my son was 3 years old, I mean, he was too small to go to a school, but I found an interesting school to put him into, and this was a school which was founded by playback singer Yesudas. Yesudas started a school in Trivandrum. It was called Vishwa Janina Bal Niketan. It is not in existence now, sadly enough, which itself is a statement on what happens to experiments of this kind. Do you know Rohan? He used to come to me and wake me up on a Sunday morning, saying that, look, why aren't you up? I need to go to school. And I would tell him, today is a Sunday. You don't have to go to school on a Sunday. But he wanted to go to school on a Sunday. What is the reason for that? The reason is because school was so wholesome. It was a happy place to be in. And everything in that school was taught through play, including writing. If you had to write ABCD, for example, you wrote it in sand, or you were given grains of rice. And with those grains of rice, you started writing A and B, So their touch with nature was complete. And the hours of school were very long. Usually, when you're 3 years old, you'll have a play school which will keep you for 2 hours. In this school, the timings were 9 to 3, which is really long. But at 3 o'clock, when I would go to pick him up, he would be radiant, radiant. The reason being, he had fun. Okay. And he was learning also. So it was such a rich experience in terms of how the school was managing him. There were instances where, I would talk to the principal and ask her about, how is he doing? What do you think of him? She had a file on every student. You will never find this in a traditional school. And that file had notings. She used to make copious notes on every child. So one day she told me that, look, he often walks out of his classroom and he goes to the next class and he stands by the window there to watch what is happening in that classroom. So I was a bit worried, like a typical stereotype parent. I thought he's losing out on his class. So I told her, why are you letting him do that? So she asked me a simple question. She said, why have you sent your son to school? You have sent him here to study. So if he is not studying in his own classroom and he's studying in some other classroom, it's fine. He's he's learning something, isn't it? So I said, how are you so sure? She said, because I've called him and I've asked him what was happening in the next classroom. And he has complete detail on what is happening in that classroom. Though he has not gone inside, he's just standing by the window and looking at the activities in the other classroom. So it is about letting go. We as parents always want to control the lives of our children. We have to let them do what they want to do without telling them that this is the path you should do. Do engineering, do medicine, get into a management school. I mean, these are the kind of things parents do to their children. By the way, my son is an engineer, but I never told him to do engineering. I never uttered the word at home, not even once. He chose to do engineering because he wanted to go into a very specialized field like petroleum engineering because he was interested in that sector. But I never asked him to do that. I mean, and a lot of my friends thought that I was a hypocrite. They said, look at your son, he's gone to engineering, and look at the kind of things that you talk about. But I never asked him to do it, you know. So the whole value system has to be built by parents and by teachers, both together. And parents have a very, very big role. And today, I think the biggest crisis in India, other than education, is parenting, because a lot of us are not even trained to do that. We don't even think about it. We don't spend time thinking about what we need to do for our children. And I think that is very, very important. Also, the fact that alternate schools give space to children to independently be alone with themselves. And that is very, very important because it helps them to ask questions to themselves. It helps them to figure out what they want to do and to find out joy in living, you know. So, I mean, there are some very interesting examples, but they are very few. But they can easily be replicated if the traditional system gets rid of its arrogance and realizes that, look, we have to create creative souls, we have to create spiritual souls, we have to create independent thinkers rather than create robots to work in a factory. But again, having said that, I must say that you can only do all these things if you have smaller numbers. But look at our classrooms today: 40 students, 50 students. You can't do that. You need to have smaller classrooms and smaller groups of children. And as I said before, very, very committed teachers.
Thank you so much, Ramesh sir, for
Yeah.
highlighting that. So you mentioned that parents and teachers both play an important role in creating a very wholesome value system. So Abhijit, my next question is for you is can traditional schools adopt this practice of creating a wholesome value system and move away from the formal education? And do you think they can maintain that balance, or do you think that there's absolutely no room for change in that regard? What are your thoughts on that?
Okay. First of all, I wouldn't even call them traditional school. Okay, well, I mean, they've lasted what, 250, 400 years. In our time span of human lifetime, human evolution, that's nothing. It's a blip. So not very traditional, I would say. Theek hai, a little bit older than what, maybe compared to our individual lifetimes, it's a bit old, but doesn't feel very traditional to me. Uh, Now, the question that you asked, I'll give a very honest answer, right? Um, I feel if it is formal schools that they have to somehow adopt alternative practices, then it's still the same school, right? It's still the same school. What has changed? The fabric is still the same. The understanding of the student, the teacher, the parent is all still the same, right? All you are doing is, yeah, let's put some horse riding in it. What's that going to change, right? I've seen enough horse riding schools for a lifetime, and I don't need to see more. No, the you'd have to dissolve the concept of the school. That's what you would have to do. So if a formal school wants to become open-minded, let's say, they'll have to forget that they're a school. That's where they would have to start, right? They'd have to reimagine from the beginning. Like if I told you today that, yeah, go ahead, think about this child and think, what kind of learning should happen. I doubt you would end up creating something as merciless as a school, right? I would hope not. I mean, honestly, so you'd have to rethink from the beginning. You'd have to reimagine the very fabric. Otherwise, there's no difference. And we are made to believe that somehow the Western schools are doing better, schools here, schools there. No, they're all based on the same fabric. I started with the same argument. I'll end with the same thing. They all have the same understanding of a child. They think of a child as an economic asset, right? And no amount of horse riding is going to change that, right? It is still, the child is still an economic asset. We will still use amazing words like 21st century skills as if the school was even enough for the 19th century, right? We will keep coming up with these new terms that again go back to our industrial imagination of a child. We think, "Nahi, what is the skill that the child will have? What am I getting for the money that I'm spending on my child? Full on ROI is what I expect from a human being." If you can't dissolve these thoughts, dissolve these imaginations, these words, and these values, you can try by all means. Put in some things that you see in alternative schools, and I promise you, it will look like a gimmick. It will, you will know while you are at it, you will know in your heart that you're lying to yourself. You're trying to make. See, if it was just about two different pedagogies, yeah, you could learn from each other. But how do you, tell something that believes in a completely different, definition of a child? to suddenly start thinking or creating an environment that goes against that very definition. How would you do that? To me, I'm not very hopeful of that. And honestly, I feel that for 70 years, at least in India and for longer in other places, people have tried, right? Look at what Gandhi wanted. Huh? So everybody listened to everything that Mahatma Gandhi said, except this one thing where he said that until we get rid of this sort of schooling, we don't really get rid of the colonial slavery in our mind, right? But woefully ignored. That part was amazingly nobody's bother. So there's the thing. I feel enough people have tried to somehow find a compromise with the system, right? And they still today, if you were to take 100 education organizations, 99 of them, maybe more if you could count fractions, would be working in somehow fixing the system, right? As if it is broken in some way. To me, it doesn't feel broken. To me, the education system is a fine working machinery. It does exactly what it was designed to do. It was designed to enslave you. It does till today. Either your slavers are gone, your masters are gone, and still in your head you can't get rid of that slavery. Tell me, what else have you seen that is so efficient, that is so perfectly crafted? It's almost evil and intelligent at the same time. So I do not want to find any compromises with it. Honestly, there is no reason for me to. I would be a very, very small minority that tries to, um, work completely independent of that system and tries to say, no, I don't care. I don't want to. If you would have to come here, you would have to make a choice, right? You don't say that, yeah, I'm in school as well as here. No, you'd have to make a choice in your heart and say, no, this works for me or this doesn't work for me. So my feeling is that I would request more and more people to at least try it out, what it feels like to create a new system, right? And the very problem, that the reason why people don't try this out, the reason why everybody tries to create the best education again inside the school, is because of the is because we call it traditional, right? Because we it has become our imagination that it's immutable, it can never change, these schools will never go away because we've seen it all our lifetime, right? But no, they can. They've only lasted a few hundred years. It's nothing. It is absolutely killable, if I can say that word. It is absolutely removable, changeable. You could have a completely different environment, completely different system, or many, many systems. It's all possible. Somebody will do it, right? Somebody's going to do it. You are either going to, wait for the best or compromise to happen, or or die trying. So I would like to do my part. I'd like to experiment and explore completely outside the system, and maybe that gives courage to a couple of more people. Maybe I will fail, but somebody else would have tried and say, "All right, we actually managed to do something that looks nothing like a school, feels nothing like a school." And maybe a couple decades down the line, when somebody asks, "Hey," says the word education, then the first thing that comes to your mind is not a table and a bench and a teacher standing with a ruler in the front and the blackboard in the front and exams and curriculum. Maybe that day will come one day, right? But it won't come by making these compromises. We still are the same blackboard teaching schools. That has not changed. Only the photographs have become colored from black and white. That's all the difference is, honestly. So yeah, that's my honest answer.
Thanks, Abhijit, for your perspective. Coming to Dr. Pooja, ma'am, can you share your insights on uh, schools today adopt some of the learnings from alternative education, and will there be challenges in doing so? What are your perspectives on that?
Yeah, in this, to some extent, I do agree with Abhijit that you cannot entirely change the formal setting, formal school system, because at the end, the fabric will remain the same. But we can adopt certain features which are in our hands, which we can do, and we should be always optimistic. If things are not done yet, few things are not done yet, doesn't mean it is not going to happen. It will happen at certain point, and somebody is going to do it. And I'm very happy to see few teachers, not few, like numbers are growing now, they are very passionate. And they are not running after money. They have a mission to bring a change in the education system. But the problem is we need to connect together. We need to bring the similar mind together so that we can work as a team in the same direction. So possibility is very much there. I've been working in formal setup, formal schools, but I won't say that I have never tried all these things. I did that at my own level with certain level of risk, because when you do something different, right, there is a risk of failing. You are taking a risk, and you are exposed to, or you are prone to criticism also. Few might like, few might not like it, who are not, aligned with your ideology, your philosophy. Definitely they are going to criticize it. It can be your principal, it can be your colleagues, it can be parents, it can be teachers also. So we need to be open to criticism. If you try something, there are chances that you might fail, there are chances that you might get criticism, but that should not stop you from doing it. Keep doing it. If you fail at 90 times, maybe the success rate can be 10%. You might be successful, at 10 times. And yes, there are challenges. There are challenges when we are going to adopt few things from alternative schooling to formal setup. First thing is financial backup. See, alternative schooling is very resource intense system where you need, people who can give individual attention to every child. And as Ramesh sir also said, the teacher student ratio is very less. So that means you need to have more number of teachers, and that to skilled, trained, passionate teachers, right? So you need to hire them, you need to pay for that. You need to have certain infrastructure for that also. Third is, formal schools, majority of them, 99% of them, they are driven through demand and supply law. What parents are demanding, the schools are supplying that. They demand marks. My student should score 90 above, 95, 98. At the end, whatever you do, whatever teacher does, at the end, the result speaks volume about the school, about the teacher. If the teacher is focusing on the holistic development and somewhere it affects the marks and it bring down the marks, that means it's a question on the capability of the teacher. We need to change that. Are we able to change that? No. Parents demand marks. Marks is everything. So, in order to incorporate all these things into formal education, we need to have parents who think in that alignment. So there is a major problem. Like even in our school, we are incorporating many things. But the problem comes from parents itself. You are just wasting my child's time. Eh, पढ़ेगा कब? यही करता रहता है वो, तो पढ़ेगा कब? जब देखो आर्ट एंड क्राफ्ट एंड कटिंग एंड डांसिंग एंड सिंगिंग, ठीक है, and many, we encourage many of the activity classes. So the attendance you will see very less, because parents have to arrange, a lot of material for that. They have to work really hard, and the attendance is very low in the activity classes. And the classes attendance you will see highest in maths class, science class. Why why because it's a demand of parents. Okay, so we need to change this perspective of the parents. So if parents start demanding of, such alternative schools, I think system will automatically change. It's just the parents are ignorant. They don't know what is, requirement of their children. They don't understand their children. That's a problem. If that thing is going to change, Abhijit, all formal school will change into alternative. It's just no parent is asking for it. Very few have realized the crisis, and they are going towards alternative education. Those who are ignorant, they will continue with formal education system, and जब तक वो रहेंगे formal education system भी ऐसे ही continue रहेगा.
How about parent ko bhi, who has taught them these things? Huh? The schools only taught them ki the marks are important. There was a time, if you were to when we talk with generations, maybe two generations above us, they say, hi, it was not such a big deal. But the schools were the ones who were telling, hey, what are you doing? Even now, we opened our first space with, like, many years back, and the school was still, they were so unhappy about kids coming after the school to our space that they would threaten children. Ki, if you go there, I'm going to beat you, and I'm going to go and complain to your parent. Right? So, parent ka kya hai? Parent is a consumer at the end of it. Education system is like a shop, right? Jao kharido, go and buy your education and stuff it down your child's throat. That's what it is. So, parent is the consumer, and these schools have marketed it very well. Ultimately, ki, nahi, marks are more important than your child's life, right? they, so a parent has turned into this person. Uski bhi there's nothing to nobody to blame anymore, क्योंकि they have been turned into these so-called the way it almost feels like a monster, right? But we programmed them into it. This education system programmed them into it, and now we feel that, okay, when we want to change something, then the parent is pushing back. But I mean, this is the reason why I say that if you were to change as a formal school into something else, you would have to get rid of being a formal school. You have to get rid of that, because the fact that you are asking for now is that the parent has to change. That is I mean, the parent is following the fundamental definition of the school. So if the parent is changing, can you even call it a school anymore? If the teacher is changing, can you call it a school anymore? If the definition of the student is changing, can you call it a school anymore? So that's the whole point. I feel we're not disagreeing necessarily. The point here is that don't try to be both. This is greed. I feel that no, I'll be somehow formal school also, and and do marks and everything and compromise in every way. But also then I want to do these ABC, few more things which look nice, and my heart tells me this, my mind tells me that, and we're not the best of anything. Then, sorry, I interjected. I don't think it was my turn to speak.
No, no. Thank you, Abhijit, and thank you, Dr. Pooja, for your insights. We are a bit over time, but Ramesh sir, any final thoughts on this particular question? Is that do you foresee a combination or a amalgamation of schools today with alternative forms of education? What are your thoughts on that?
You see, I'm an incorrigible optimist. But as far as this is concerned, let me tell you, it's not happening. You have full page ads today, full page ads. They're very, very expensive. And these are all the schools who are advertising. And they say, we have a swimming pool, we teach swimming, we have a horse riding club, we have horses on our campus. Exactly what Abhijit was talking about. But they are very, very traditional schools. They're all teaching them the same thing. They're all running a race like that is the end of their life. Okay. And Pooja was right about parents. I mean, parents are also forcing schools to do this. And schools will not do this because there is no money in alternate education. There is money in traditional education. And schools today are business enterprises. Let's not run away from this fact. It is a fantastic business proposition to have a school or to get into the education business. You can never lose money in this country. All other things will be affected by inflation. Education will never be, because in India, parents will spend, they will borrow loans, they'll sell their land to send their children to the best schools and the best colleges and the most expensive ones, because they think that the most expensive ones are the best ones, which is not even true. You know, there are very, very good schools. Government schools are there, which are very, very good, but they won't send them to a government school, because ultimately you need to also tell your neighbor where your son is studying, where your daughter is studying. So, personally, I'm not very optimistic about it, but I think, parents who are evolved parents, at least they are looking at homeschooling, they are looking at alternate education, and that is the little ray of hope that one sees. But I don't see traditional schools moving into integrating what we are talking about today, because that is
Thank you
not
so
their
much.
philosophy.
Thank you so much,
I want
Ramesh.
to I want to end with one thing. Once I was teaching in a classroom and I was walking around and I saw something scrawled on the desk, and it said, "This is in memory of all those who died waiting for the class to get over." So that is a searing comment on our education system.
Thank you so much. On that note, Ramesh sir, this was a wonderful 1 hour, great learning experience for me as well as the audience. So thank you, Ramesh sir. Thank you, Dr. Pooja, and thank you, Abhijit, for spending this hour with us and sharing your insights into experience on alternative education and how we parents and children today can foster this learning system, through creating a wholesome value system as well as connecting with your spirituality and inner child, and moving ahead in life. We could discuss a lot more, and I had a lot of more questions, but since we have run out of time, we have to end this conversation here. But thank you so much, everyone, for joining us and sharing your insights. I'm sure a lot of the audience members learned a lot from insights. So thank you so much, Ramesh sir.
Thank
Thank
you.
you, Dr. Pooja, and thank you, Abhijit.
Thank you.